What's up, everybody? K-Sidich, K5. All my fratellos, brothers, and paisans across the world. This is yours truly. You see who I am. You all know me. And this is Bagman 2. Essentially, like I said, there's so much to talk about, but I've been blessed with an incredible career. You know, incredible, using some Spanish, using some Italian. Forget about it. There's only one Nick Baby Love. And if I can just lower this a little bit. So, Bagman 2, 3, 4, 5, what have you, you know, it's the early years. You know, I've been very, very blessed to have my Italian heritage in me, from running numbers when I was younger to just really learning the ropes and paying my dues, which nobody does today. For all you new school people, even you old school people who still don't have a clue. This is the real business. This is not a TV show. And I don't even want to give the names of them because they're fugazis. In other words, like a fake diamond ring. So, just, if I go back, you know, to Bagman 1, where I started, where I was born, outside of Boston in Worcester, Mass. And I already mentioned all those people. I'll bring them along again. I can remember one of the first people that started me sending me product was a guy named Mark Paul Simon. Okay, the gay mafia in California, in Los Angeles. Just an incredible human being, along with one of the greatest DJs who ever lived, mix master, chemical engineer from, you know, MIT in Boston, Jimmy Stewart, and many other people. But I'm interacting with those two because they took the time out to teach me. They were very kind. And Mark actually was the first one, Mark Paul Simon, to ever mail me records right to Worcester, Mass. Because, see, I reported to Billboard magazine. There was each area in the country, Boston, New York, Philly, had 6 reporters. And it made you incredibly valuable because people forget that I was a DJ. They forget about all that how I started on the radio and did so many things that I will go into. And, you know, I'm going to be all over the place, but that's all right. This is about my career and about me giving back, because I don't want you to make the mistakes. I don't want you to think, well, it's 1, 2, 3, because everybody's got a computer now and they think they're in the music business. You're not. I'm considered a 1%er. You know what I mean? I'm definitely, even with my haters, I'm in the top 15%, 20% for sure. But really, I'm a 1%er, which means I'm a quarterback. I do everything. There's nothing I don't know about because I've been schooled by the greatest people ever. So back to Mark Paul Simon. He opened up the door. He sent me an amazing amount of product because he had provocative promotions and he was trying to do things and he needed reporters. And so he sent me stuff like Find My Way, which was written by a paisan friend of mine, was it Johnny Melfi, whatever. But that's how I met Larry Blackman and Cameo. That was their first record. He sent me Tavares because he knew they were only 30 miles away from me. They were in New Bedford. They were Portuguese and black. You know what I mean? And that's a very, a kind of a weird area. You talk about, you know, prejudice and all that stuff. You know, I done lived it. You know what I mean? Of course, The Irish ran Boston, which it is what it is. I'm not going to get negative. You can talk about Whitey Bulger, whatever. He's amateur hour compared to the way they really run it and control it. And then, of course, in Providence, which is in between where I live, both cities, the Italians run, Federal Hill. They ran Providence, and they were part of the Genovese. My dad's got a distant cousin. His last name is Salerno. I'll leave that for a future thing. So, Mark Paul Simon sent me Tavares. That's how I met Freddie Perrin. That's how I met Neil Bogart. And then Cecil Holmes at Chocolate City. Of course, Neil Bogart, was the CEO of Casablanca, one of the 4 or 5 greatest dance labels in history. Donna Summer, she was from, believe it or not, my backyard too. She was from Jamaica Plains, right outside of Boston. Right? So, you could go on all day about stuff, but just so many records. Even one of the first TK things he sent me, and I eventually met a guy named Henry Stone down the road once I moved to Florida, a record, On My Way to Nowhere by Hocus Pocus. So there was so many records, and I was honored to meet Freddie Perrin, because then I was in the loop with and there's a video with Reggie Mathis, the lawyer for Flo Rida, that shows the whole thing. I explain it, and maybe the filmmakers will do what they gotta do, so I don't have to go on and on, except to say, Tavares, they were very, very important. I was a young kid on the radio, 17, and I broke Check It Out. I'm here at Strong Arm Entertainment, Strong Arm Radio, and hanging out for a minute, with the legend. I want to let the whole world know, like this, to my man Freezy, and to Flo, and Teddy T, Skull, and everybody else, Reggie Mathis is the man. And it's a pleasure to be with you, my brother.
Man,
we're going to be having a lot of fun as I do this old school show, rocking and rolling with Tavares. And today we're doing, like I was telling you, I go way, way back. I'm in my 60s.
Tavares, I know them well. Tavares out of Boston, and
I'm
with the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack, and their cousin, the bailiff for Judge Trawick, JR. That's their cousin. That's when I first met them. They came down and did an old school show with Taylor Dane and Kool & the Gang, and JT from Kool & the Gang.
Well, let me tell you how far I go back. I got a song. It was like a test pressing. Check It Out. The program had it, and I kept complaining and complaining. On one of my first shows, I played the record 7 times in a 3 or 4 hour thing. And then the rest is history with Joe Smith and Capitol and I didn't know nothing about promotion. I was just a DJ
what was the record?
It was called Check It Out. Their first single, a ballad, which, was really, really cool. And actually, because I was playing it, the honeys were going crazy. And that's sort of how the record really broke, because they were from New Bedford, and it was, just 30 miles away, you know what I mean? It's part of the whole clique in Massachusetts, because Massachusetts is, a cliquey area. You got the Italians, and then, they're Protege. They're Portuguese and black.
I got a fraternity brother. He's a bishop now, Lester J. McCord. He's from Worcester, Massachusetts. So.
You're tripping me out. So in Worcester, that's where I'm from. I'm very proud. I worked at WRC and WNEB for a minute, and then WAAF, a big FM station. So anyway, that's how it started. And they found out about me. And the thing is, I never got down with them because it was so crazy, and then I moved to Florida. But I did the whole thing, promoted for Capitol. And then this guy, Mark Paul Simon, who they know about, he sent me one of the first test pressings. I was only like 19, 20 years old. Of It Only Takes a Minute. I burnt that in the clubs. Yep. Exactly. And so from Check It Out to It Only Takes a Minute that led to the whole thing with Saturday Night Fever. So they did a version that the Bee Gees wrote of More Than a Woman, and that became the #1 song on Saturday Night Fever, and it really is the biggest song of their career. And so since I was like 19, 20 years old, because they're from my backyard, and it's a very personal thing, you know, you got a friend that's from Worcester, New Bedford, the whole thing, and so from you know, the ballad, which is really, really amazing. When I was a young kid, I thank God blessed me with good ears.
Yes, indeed.
You know what I mean? Well, we're doing a lot together.
It's an honor, and you know, definitely on Thursdays when we do the throwback every Thursday, definitely, you know, want to stay a little longer and ride with you some more, man. But it's an honor to sit with you, Nick Baby Love.
One of many people. I don't claim to be the greatest of all time. I'm not the GOAT, but I'm part of this business, and I really know the business. You know what I mean? So I give it to Mark Paul Simon and everybody else he introduced me to at Casablanca and Chocolate City, you know, the sub-label of Casablanca. You know, there's plenty of other labels. If I'm going back to that, you know, like Prelude, Sal Soul. I'm doing this off the top of my head, obviously. And so then I started, you know, spinning in clubs. I worked at Green Street Cafe. Kenny Caperso gave me the name Baby Love. He started saying Nick Baby Love, and they would say Lovey Dovey. They would say Lovey. They would say, you know, all kinds of connotations. And eventually Nick Baby Love stuck. I didn't like it, but it just stuck. You know what I mean? I didn't come up with it. It's Kenny Caperso, just a famous radio programmer and another part of the gay mafia. You know, he knew everybody from Dick Clark, you know who that is, to, of course, Mark Paul Simon. You know, these are really the early years. I was young. I was 19, 20, 21, 22, whatever. I can remember being at the Billboard convention in 1976. I met Bob Crew. He was the owner of the label that, you know, produced Bob Gaudio and, of course, Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. And he gave me Swearing to God, one of the first 12 inches. I could go on all day. Two Little Men, Too Little Time, whatever, Mikel Brown. I forgot my man's name, but that was Bill Wardlow at Billboard. So all this happened because I was a Billboard reporter. And then while that's going on, here I am at BJ's Disco in Worcester, Mass. Because I'm a Billboard reporter, I become a reporter with the legendary Vince Aletti. I love you, Vince. I can come to tears because you are unbelievable. You are one of the greatest historians. Ray Caviano, who we're going to talk about, who is somebody that I totally admire. You know, Vince Aletti, I reported to Record World magazine at the time. And in fact, Bill Kelly was on my first report. He spun at the Warehouse in Miami. I spun at BJ's Disco in Worcester, Mass. And I don't know what my top 10 was, but it was another, you know, Johnny Melfi record. It was all I knew right then. I learned because I had met, you know, various people in New York. That's when I met Tom Moulton. I mean, I met everybody because it was like a family. It was at the Sheraton in '76. Everybody was there in the lobby. It was more family orientated, and it was dance music. You can say disco, whatever. Before it really blew up big, because Studio 54 in 1979. That's the whole thing. This thing started in '72. You know, I mean, so you know, basically there was so many people there. You know, like I said, Tom Moulton is mixed 500 records, whatever, a bunch of records, from Double Exposure all the way to the Tramps. Tom, I love you for, you know, our mutual friend and one of my mentors, and I consider you a mentor, even though We haven't talked for years. Tom, you dedicated the Tramps album, you know, Disco Inferno, to the memory of Jimmy Stewart. And of course, Jimmy Stewart, who tragically, you know, died, you know, in a terrible accident in a bathhouse fire in New York City in 1977. You dedicated the Tramps album, like I said. Disco Inferno, you know, you produced the Tramps, everybody else, double exposure, but you dedicated the album just to him. And that's one of the greatest things that a human being could have done for another human being. Because we're all human beings. Forget all the other nonsense, you know what I mean? I was raised in a special way. You know, even though, you know, I'm Italian and there's certain connotations, yes, it's all true. My grandfather, Nicola Salerno Ciani, capisci? Do you understand me in Italian? You know, he was a capo di capi. He reported to the Genovese. And, you know, that's where, you know, I eventually met other people. I had a pass. I was given a shot, you know what I mean, to go meet people. I'll mention like Morris Levy, which I was introduced to by Henry Stone. And I had a meeting with him and did my thing and whatnot. So, you know, it's just, you know, when you get started, and I gotta recognize all the people in Boston. You know, there was a beautiful thing on Day Night Jacobitis, and he was one of the guys like Cosmo Wyatt, or Captain Wendell, or Joey Carvello. Hello, Joey. We got a little bit of a riff now, but God, life's too short, brother. You know what I mean? George Borden, Jerry Warren. These are my G's from Boston. And of course, John T.C. Luongo. You gave me all the records from the Boston record pool / Mass record pool, which was Gary Canavo eventually. And who am I missing in Boston? Of course, one of my mentors, which that's why I want to go into the thing, was Sonny Joe White. Nobody even realized it. You know, I'm a guy who was on a radio at WAAF in Worcester, WRC, WNEB. That's how I broke stuff in my backyard, like the legendary group Tavares. It all happened through the producer Freddie Perrin and everybody at Capitol Records. And I believe Joe Smith was there at the time, etc. So even though just trying to tell a story, you got to pay your dues. This is not about computers and whatever. The music business, as I tell everybody and I give back, is 3 things. Who you know, and who do you effing friggin' know in the music business.
And everybody knows somebody that knows somebody that knows something about it.
Because if you don't know somebody, you ain't doing diddly squat. You know, example as I'm throwing in here, later years, MC Hammer, I lived in his house. It's all on Twitter, whatever. That's a whole nother story. If you live in somebody's house for a while, I think you're personal friends. Same thing with Ray Caviano. I spent time with him because both of us separately learned from Henry Stone. I mean, Ray is, you know, one of the only living legends that I consider in the music business now. He's doing a thing called the history of dance music. Again, because that goes back to the early years, the history of dance music. He's the CEO, the curator, everything of the history of dance music. And by the way, Ray needs a kidney transplant. And I have to mention that. So Ray Caviano, you know, when I get into the TK thing, we'll mention that, but he's a guy that's got Petta Wayne now, you know, and that's the only new artist I'm going to put in there. Petta Wayne, as long as he continues to listen, P-E-T-A-W-A-N-E, Petta Wayne, one word, he's going to really happen. Because, you know, one of the greatest things Ray ever did, he discovered change. RFC, distributed by Warner Brothers Atlantic. Ray had all kinds of deals. and he goes way, way back because he discovered a guy named Luther Vandross, who was just like a background singer in Change. And do I have to say anything more? Ray Caviano and Luther Vandross are like this. 1976, when I went to New York, actually with Arthur Baker and a gentleman named Billy Stook, another big-time DJ from Worcester, Mass, and the surrounding areas. And Arthur Baker, of course, became really good friends with me. You know, we're from the Boston area, him and Maurice Starr. So that's where I'll talk later about New Edition, New Kids on the Block. And then we got the first New Edition album, you know, which we went and it was recorded in New York. You know, this comes all out of the Billboard convention in '76, and eventually went and were recorded at the Hit Factory in New York City, back in the day where the equipment was different. The drum machines were just invented. So moving on from there, like I said, and everybody I met, I do want to mention Mike Theodore and Dennis Coffey, who became good friends. They had Westbound Records, big records like Devil's Gun by CJ and Company, and we did our own thing. We got our own thing, etc. And so many other people at the convention. Like I said, I had mentioned Bob Crew and many other people. So, you know, we will cover everybody. Then moving along, back and forth, spinning between Boston and New York, and then I moves to Miami. And before then, in 1979, I went to another Billboard convention, which you'll see, and the bottom line was I met several people there, including Curtis Urbina, who introduced me to his partner, Sergio Casa. And then, you know, little did we know, Henry Stone decided, you know, I had met him. I was living, you know, in Miami, which was close to Hialeah, Florida, where TK Productions and Tone Distribution, the biggest distributor at the time, were right there. And so that's where I had all the records. And I was thrown into the fire because there was a big argument whether I could do black radio, whatever. And of course, Henry knew I was really a brother. Other people just played it. You know what I mean? They said I was a neighbor lover, which still pisses me off to this day. Because I'm a OG. Do you hear me? I really know the music business. I done lived it. I didn't know what I was doing. I was like the lamest promoter in history. How I got the job, I still don't know. January 15th, 1980. Linda Stone, per her dad, Henry Stone, said, let's give him a shot. I know this kid's a hustler and he's hungry, and you know what? He'll work cheap. That's what Henry wanted to hear. He'll work cheap. He's inexpensive. He's a paisan and he's connected. You follow me? Even Morris Levy knows who his family is. I capiche? When I first got the job at Tone Distribution via Henry Stone, and somebody must have said something to somebody where they were worried about whether I could do black radio. You know, I went in, running my mouth, talking smack, brought in 4 or 5 stiff records, and right away, within 10 seconds, Jerry would say, next. We're never gonna play that, you're wasting your time. And I'm talking and rambling, being convoluted as I am, you know, as everybody, even the pretty Tonys of the world, who I met later, that's a whole nother story. How many records I broke for him, you know, and his partners. And so Jerry Rushin just called me. He wasn't even allowing me in the building. They threw me out at least a couple of times. On 35th Street, WEDR 99.1 FM, now known as 99 Jamz. Eventually, when Jerry did give me the call and said, give me a box of Kano's, I'm ready. We even liked the flip side, Holly Dolly, bring it over. There's also another record, JR Funk, coming up. Just bring it over there. We want a box. And the record broke because everybody watched Miami. When they, even back in the day when there was no media base in BDS, that record blew up like crazy. Like I said, right through the state of Florida, into Georgia, and through the whole country. And then by accident, I was thrown into national promotion, you know, and moved temporarily to New York, you know, to be with Emergency Records and Sergio Casa, the CEO. And of course, my paisan, Curtis Urbina, his partner. Moving on from there, I says, look, I need to pull a box. Jerry Rushin just called me. On 35th Street, WEDR 99.1 FM, now known as 99 Jamz, where DJ Khaled and DJ Irie and everybody else came from. You know, back in the day it was George Boogie Jones, Jimmy G, Leo Jackson, Sweetback, The Back is Black, Baby Huey, and several other people, James T, Chico the Virgo. These are all familia. I capiche, these are my fratellos for life, to this day, right here, here. You better understand that, because the Genovese are the capo di tutti capi of the 5 families, and just because I'm mentioning it, it don't mean nothing. The Bonanos, the Lucchese's, the Gambinos, and the Colombos. And of course, like I said, the Genovese, started by a guy named Vito Genovese, who worked as the man assistant. Boy, everybody's gonna laugh when I say that. But he was more than the assistant to the guy who started it all, Lucky Luciano, and his partner, Frank Costello. I know my stuff because my grandfather schooled me from when I was 5, 6 years old. Nicola Salerno Ciani, with the Genovese and running his own thing. Like I said, the Italians ran Providence, Rhode Island, and all surrounding areas. You know, there's another family that I want to mention, the Patriarchas. Okay? Don't even get me started. That's who my grandfather, let's say, was friends with. You know what I mean? They used to golf together. Ha! So, the reason I'm mentioning all this is because this is how you get started. This is the real music business. It was about who you know, who you know, who you know. And so, back to Kano, once I did that and Jerry Rushin put the record on, the flip side was Holly Dolly. It was a double-sided hit, but Kano's I'm Ready became a smash. In later years, that's a whole nother story. It was sampled. They thought they were going to get away with it. Oh, not with me around. Because Sergio is my paisan and my fratello for life. And so is Curtis. He just did a thumbs up when he remembered on there on Facebook. So that's how it is. You know, the point of the whole thing is that record blew up through the state of Florida. My buddy Scotty Andrews, God rest his soul, V103 in Atlanta, he popped it. Then, you know, at the time, you know, his big Kiss went away in Boston, Sonny Joe White. But Kano's I'm Ready became a smash, and I mentioned all the radio people. I mean, going into Floyd Blackwell and Savannah, to all the way up to, you know, Frankie Crocker at WBLS in New York, Carlos De Jesus. This is how, when you got a hit record, you get and you meet people. Even my boy Elroy Smith, WILD in Boston, and then went to GCI in Chicago, one of the biggest programmers, like Scotty Andrews at V103 in Atlanta. And I could go into like Carl Connors in Houston, Tom Joyner when he first started. I could go into so many other people, and it's just, you know, then my man, Greg Mack, K-Day, which was the biggest thing in Los Angeles, and on and on and on. I can mention a million radio people. That's how it was really done. Personal, one-on-one, and you had to know people, period. So that's how the whole thing started. And then I had hit after hit after hit.
can't touch this. You can't touch this. You can't touch this. You can't touch this. My music hits me so hard, makes me say, oh my Lord, thank you for blessing me. What a mind to rhyme and to hype me, it feels good when you know you're down. A super dope homeboy from the Oak Town, and I'm known as such. And this is a beat you can't touch. I told you, homeboy, you can't touch this. Yeah, that's how we living, and you know you can't touch this. Look in my eyes, man, break it down. Hammer time. Every time you see me, the hammer's just so hype. I'm dope on the floor and I'm magic on the mic. Now why would I ever stop doing this? With others making records that just don't hit. I tour around the world, from London to the Bay. It's hammer go, hammer empty, hammer yo, hammer, and the rest can go and play. Can't touch this. You can't touch this.